Welcome to episode 63 of the David and Hillary Show.
Yes, welcome. On our last episode, we teased that we were working on a guest appearance for this week.
That's right, and we are happy to report that we have secured my father, Ron McClung, for 2 more episodes of the David and Hillary Show.
I love your dad. You know, he's my dad too.
I know. You fell in love with him as a dad before you fell in love with me.
Yes, I did. Well, I am so glad that he could visit for a few days, and I am looking forward to hearing your interview.
Well, we really had a great time, and I know our viewers are going to love it.
Yeah, let's do this.
Well, Dad, welcome back to the David and Hillary Show.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you back. We really enjoyed when you were here for episodes 32 and 33.
Thanks.
And we got a lot of good response from people on that. And so we would like to have you on more often. You're just a treasure trove of wisdom. and we really enjoy it, and our viewers enjoy it. But we're unfortunately not great with the tech. We haven't figured out yet how to do Zoom and record for the format that we normally use.
Sure.
And we would like to expand our set, but blah, blah, excuses. Anyway, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, the other reason it's difficult is because you live a ways away.
I do.
About what we were talking about that. I measure it in time. We normally drive, and it takes us about 9 hours to drive. But how many miles did you say you thought it was?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's somewhere between 500 and 600 miles
Yeah.
from Owasso, Michigan, where I live, down here to Franklin.
So we're not just dropping by each other's house after work.
Right.
Unfortunately, that would be nice. But you came down for Easter week.
Yes, I did. And flew down on Thursday and plan to fly back next Thursday. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
It was funny when we started talking about it. You said, well, I can come, but I can only come if you can put up with us for a week. Typical dry humor. And we were like, yeah, I mean, we're all in. So let's do it.
Well, the flights are great because it's direct from Flint, Michigan to Nashville. But they've changed the times, and now they're both ways. It's very early.
Yeah.
So.
Well, early, but worth it. So
Well, thanks. I think it's worth it. I'm happy to do it.
we're glad to be able to hang out with you and to have you back on the podcast.
Great.
We did a couple different formats. One with Hillary that was about Bible stuff, which is your area of expertise. And then you and I just had some discussions about your life. I think we
Right.
called it Stories from My Life with Ron McClung.
Right.
So we may just call this episode that part 2, because we're going to do it again because I had so much fun with it. And of course, you being my dad, we had a lot of shared experiences when I was younger.
True.
And and we'll circle back to Easter probably toward the end.
Okay.
But one of the other things that we talked about is that you are an author,
Right.
and a lot of different types of writing. You've done writing for the Christian denomination, the Wesleyan Church, with Bible studies and lesson plans and things like that. And you've done devotionals.
True.
And you've written an article, Positive Perspective, that's been in print in the Owasso newspaper for how long now?
Over 38 years.
Every week.
Every week.
Yeah. That's crazy.
No.
In the best possible way, but that's quite an accomplishment. That's really neat. And then you've recently started writing novels.
Yes, about 2 years ago, after your mom, my wife, Carol, passed away, I found I had more time on my hands, and I wondered if I could finish that novel. I started years earlier and put it on the back shelf for a while, and I did, and enjoyed the process so much that I've continued. So now I'm working on my 5th novel. The 4th one, I hope to have it available by probably June, at least by the June of this year.
Yeah.
And but I'm working on the the 5th one,
Yeah.
And they're all part of the same series, the Miller Chronicles, starting with Roland Miller in 1737, and then now I'm up to the War of 1812 and
Wow.
writing the fifth one.
So set in, well, at least partly in the United States, or predominantly in the United States.
Predominantly, yes.
And so so it's historical fiction, and I
That's
know
right.
you've always liked history, and
Yeah.
so you've woven the lives of your fictional characters into actual history and had them
Right.
meet some actual historical figures from that time frame.
That's true. Yeah, had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. Well, as I think I mentioned before, I'm not that much of a reader, but I am working my way through them, and I find them very interesting.
Thank you.
I think other people will too. Well, stories from your life. I think last time we said where else to start but at the beginning, and we told the story of you coming home from your birth and having to be pulled through the snow.
That's right.
by a horse-drawn
Yep.
sled up to the house, and that was a pretty interesting story. Again, I think that was episode 32 or 33. If anyone missed that, they're going to want to go back and watch both of those episodes. But I'm wondering, as much as you like history, is there anyone in our family history at large that played a notable role in history?
Yes, I think so. My great-great-great-great-grandfather, William McClung, lived in the 1700s, and the McClung family emigrated to the United States in the early 1700s, settled in Pennsylvania, then fanned out to other places. He happened to settle in western Virginia, what's now West Virginia, Greenbrier County,
Yep.
and was one of the early settlers in that part of the land to make it safe for people to have property and homes there and farm, and he had to fight off the Indians. And in fact, he was part of the Virginia militia that fought in the Revolutionary War. He participated in the Battle of Point Pleasant, which is now in West Virginia.
Okay.
And that was a battle with Virginia militia and the Choctaw Indians, as I recall.
Okay.
And I don't remember all the details, but it was quite a battle. And there's an interesting book on his life, William McClung, written by Nancy Richmond, that's available on Amazon. Then he also fought in some other battles, most notably the Battle of Cowpens in South Carolina.
Okay.
And not a lot of people know about that battle. It isn't one of the more famous ones. It's not like Valley Forge or the Battle for Trenton
Right.
But it was pretty crucial because it proved that the colonial militia could stand up for itself against Great Britain, the greatest army in the world. And then after that, the British moved on to Yorktown, and of course that's where it all ended with George Washington accepting their surrender at Yorktown.
Right.
But William McClung was involved in that. The story goes that in his older years, he could stand on his front porch and call 200 McClungs to breakfast.
Wow.
That's a whole community of McClungs. That's a lot of bacon, eggs, and biscuits, I can tell you.
Well, that's a lot of people, but if you know the McClungs, you're going to need a lot of eggs and bacon to
Right.
make that meal work and everybody not go away hungry.
That's true. But in terms of history and more modern times, my three oldest brothers, Johnny, the oldest, Don, the second one, and Harold, the third one, all served in the Second World War.
Right.
Johnny was in the South Pacific, Don was in Europe, and Harold was in the Navy. And he got in toward the end of the war, so he didn't really see action as the others did. But Don, actually, my second oldest brother, was a prisoner of war. And
I remember hearing that story.
yeah, he was in a camp somewhere near Munich, and they would put the prisoners on a train every day and take them into Munich, and they would fill in craters that had been created from American bombs that had been dropped.
Okay.
And but he managed to escape. The Germans heard that the Americans were coming, pardon me, in their direction, and so they decided to move all the prisoners to another location. So Don and his buddy crawled under the barracks, and they managed to stay hidden. And in all the confusion of moving people around, they were not missed. And after the camp was empty, they escaped, hurried over a hill. A German farm family took them in and fed them and protected them until they could rejoin an American outfit.
Yeah,
So we were just glad all three of them, my brothers, came back safely from World War II.
absolutely. And what a great story. I always felt like that we had courage in our blood, and that's certainly one example that proves that.
I would like to think so.
Yeah. Well, those are some great stories of our direct lineage and things that stood out in history. Well, what about other famous people? Have you met any famous people during your life?
Well, I've met some people who were well known. My wife and I went to a conference in California and met Robert Schuller. It was before the days of the Crystal Cathedral, actually. And
He's
because I've
been on television for many, many years.
Yes.
He's no longer, but people might be familiar with that.
right, and because of that and other conferences like that, I've met some well-known religious individuals and writers and so forth. But probably the most famous person I ever met was John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
It was before he was president. It was in the, I think it was probably in the fall of 1960.
Okay.
I was a senior in high school, and they were forming a parade on the grounds of the high school near our football stadium. And I came out the door. I always exited from the building and happened to look over, and Senator Kennedy was standing by himself. Security was not as tight in those days as it would become, of course,
So
later.
like all by himself.
All by himself, just standing there. So I just plucked up enough courage to go over and stick out my hand and say, Mr. Kennedy, I'm Ron McClung, or Ronald. I probably used my formal name, Ronald McClung.
Yeah, yeah.
And he took my hand and we shook hands, and I wished him, I told him it was nice to meet him, and that I wished him luck in the upcoming election. And I didn't have any more to say, so he was very appreciative, and I turned around and left and went home. But it was just one of those serendipitous things that happened.
Yeah.
I was in the right place at the right time.
Well, that's really cool. And there's that courage again.
Well,
Oh, I would have probably said, "Oh, that's cool," and I would have walked the other way because I courageous about other things maybe, but not so much that. No, that's really neat. Well, speaking of significant events in history, I remember. Well, let me start this way. We have Americans who are headed to space.
yes, that's right.
And at the time of this recording, in early April 2026, we have astronauts going back to circle the moon. And when they get to the far side of it, I understand they're going to be farther away from Earth than any humans have ever been.
That's what I understand.
And hopefully they get back safe
Yes.
and safe and sound. But I remember, believe it or not, I was born in 65, and it was 69 that we landed on the moon. I remember, I think, watching that on television. I certainly remember some of those types of events.
Right.
And I remember us going, it's just funny how marketing things change through the years. I remember us stopping at the gas station and you going inside and coming back with glasses, drinking glasses that had some kind of commemorative thing. It was probably like if you come fill up for a really inexpensive price, you can get a glass. And we had glasses that you look like you're looking at me like you don't remember that.
I don't remember that one, but I know we collected glasses from various places.
Something about the moon landing or
Okay.
about the Apollo project.
Yeah.
So I was awfully young, but I remember I have several memories from that house in Fort Wayne, which is where we were in '69.
Right. And where we were when we saw that landing, however, we were in West Virginia. We were on
Okay.
vacation at visiting my mother and my sister, and we were in my sister's house, and it was late at night, and we stayed up and watched the moon landing on television that
Okay.
night. Yeah, but interesting sideline to that, we did have a television set in our home back in Fort Wayne, but we had gone there in 1966. You were just a year old for my first pastorate.
Right.
And we moved in next door to a retired Catholic layman by the name of Mart Sternberger.
Okay.
Mart was a great guy. He was a widower, lived alone, and we had good relationship as neighbors. And I came home one Saturday afternoon. It was that fall of 1966, and here sat a portable television set in my house.
Okay.
And I asked Carol, where did that come from? She said, well, our neighbor Mart brought it over. He said it was an extra one. He said the Miss America pageant is on tonight, and he just knew you'd want to see that. Why he got the impression I would want to see the Miss America pageant, I have no idea.
Oh man.
But when I went over to thank him for it, I found out what his the method behind his madness was.
Okay.
He said, by the way, he said, if you would be willing to keep my sidewalks clear of snow, you can keep that television set as long as you live here. And I was young and healthy, and I thought that was a great deal. But I'd never lived through a Fort Wayne winter before, and I found out Mart got the best end of that deal because I shoveled a lot of snow off his
Right.
sidewalks and some out of his driveway, to keep him safe during the winter. But that was how we got our first television set.
Wow.
And if I remember correctly, when we left there, he just told us to keep it.
Yeah.
And
I think so, because I think it was a 13-inch black and white, and we had it
Sound-
for a
sounds about
long
right.
time.
Yeah.
A long time. So, yeah, I just had a comment, and it went right out of my head. But yeah, I think it was probably going to be something for the fact that the nuance there that some people might miss was that being a Wesleyan pastor in the 1960s, pretty conservative, and the whole idea of a beauty pageant where the whole point is to have women, pace up and down,
Right.
and let's vote on who's the prettiest. It was about as politically incorrect as you could get, but at that time, not so much. But maybe not something that in Bible school they would say, "Hey, make sure you're watching the beauty pageant."
No, we didn't. That would not have been the thing that should be uppermost in your mind.
Right, exactly. Well, we've talked about several historical things, including a little bit with your brothers in the war. So I seem to remember there was a time when you, here in the States, heard a siren go off, an air raid, and that was a pretty startling event for you. Tell us about that.
Well, I thought it might be an air raid. Fast forward from Fort Wayne, we moved to Dover, Delaware in 1973, and I became pastor of a church there. And when we arrived, it was shortly after the 4th of July, very hot, and our furniture had not arrived yet. And so we had the church had made arrangements for us to stay with Mrs. Richardson, who lived just about a half a block down the street from our house.
Yep.
And
I remember that. She was older, and
Yes.
she made the best pies.
she did. She was a widow lady, and she was a great pie baker. So she was very gracious, took us in, and gave us a bedroom upstairs. You boys had a bedroom down the hall, and Carol and I were in the front of the house and because it was hot in the summer and there was no air conditioning, it was pretty hot and humid.
Yeah.
The windows were open, and there was a small fan to circulate the air. But wee hours of the morning, 1:30, something like that, I heard this siren go off. It was an undulating high and then low and high and low. And I thought, what on earth is that noise? And so I ran over to the window to look out, thinking surely there are going to be lights coming on up and down the street as people respond to this
Right.
terrible racket.
Yeah.
And much to my surprise, nobody else's lights were coming on. Nobody seemed to be upset about it. And then it dawned on me, we're close to Dover Air Force Base. And that sound of that siren, it was exactly what I remembered as a kid when we had air raid drills.
Okay.
So I was just almost in panic mode to think that we had moved to Dover, Delaware to die in an air raid. And when you wake up in the middle of the night, it's just all kinds of crazy things go through your head. And that was one of them. And so I thought, I felt bad for Mrs. Richardson and this terrible noise, but Carol, who was very level-headed, said, well, why don't you just come back to bed? We'll ask Mrs. Richardson about it tomorrow. So at breakfast the next morning, she served us a nice breakfast, and at one point I said, Mrs. Richardson, what was that terrible noise about 1:30 this morning? And she said, what noise? She hadn't heard a thing. Well, I come to find out it was not an air raid siren. It was calling the volunteer firemen to assemble to
Okay.
respond to some emergency.
Yeah.
And so we lived in that same house, for a few years, and we got used to the noise too. It didn't wake us
Right.
up anymore after a while. But so fortunately, there was no air raid.
Well, it's not really the same thing, but on the first Saturday of every month around noon, they test the severe weather warning siren, and it sounds kind of similar. It's at the school about a half a mile down from here, and it's very loud. If you don't know what it is, it would kind of freak you out. But yeah, for the volunteer fire, that's funny because 1973, they not only would not have had cell phones, they would not have even had pagers,
Right.
or probably the technology to have a computer call everyone on their home phone.
Exactly.
So yeah, how have the times changed?
I know. It's so true. And, Dover was the state capital, but they didn't have a paid fire department. There may have been some people that were paid, but they had volunteers. And but, lots of things have changed, as you said.
Well, thankful for people who are willing to do that. and
Exactly.
be there when people need them.
Right.
Well, speaking of Dover, Delaware, that was the first house that we lived in, a half a block
Yes.
from Mrs. Richardson. And I also remember on more than one occasion, the phone would ring and Mom would be on the phone, and she would get off the phone and she'd say, okay, David, you run down to Mrs. Richardson. She's got a pie for us.
That sounds right.
Yeah. My two favorites were lemon meringue and coconut cream.
Okay. Good choices.
Yeah, she was good at that. But later on, the house next to the church went up for sale,
That's right.
and the church bought it, and that became the church parsonage.
That's right. Yeah.
And a lot of memories from there. But one of them is that the parking lot was it gravel up until then?
It had been gravel.
So it was paved for the first time.
That's right. Yeah.
And so there's kind of an interesting story about how some of that got paid for.
Well, it is interesting. We paved the parking lot. The church building itself was only 3 years old when we moved there. Beautiful building, probably the prettiest church building I was ever affiliated with. Colonial style architecture, red kind of burgundy carpet, white ends on the dark pews, white pulpit furniture, chandeliers. I mean, it's just a beautiful church.
Yeah.
And but then finally we scraped together enough money to have a down payment so we could pave our parking lot. We were able to take out a small loan to finish it off. And so it was just wonderful to have no dust anymore, had a lovely parking lot. And in the back corner of our property was a small piece of land that was landlocked. There was a little white house on it, And the only access they had to their house was on our driveway, the church driveway,
Yeah.
which was fine.
Interesting setup.
Right, yeah, very unusual. And I was there one day closing up the church, getting ready to go home for the evening. It was a Friday evening. And the man that owned that house came across the parking lot, and he said, Reverend, he said, I don't know if you know or not, but we have a little poker game at my house on Friday nights, and he said nothing serious. He said, but it rained today, and when the boys came in to play poker, instead of parking in my yard as we've been doing, they parked on your new parking lot.
Okay.
And I said, oh, that's fine. I wasn't going to make a big deal out of that.
Right.
And he said, and so I told them, guys, you're going to have to make a contribution to the church because they just paved their parking lot. And if you're going to park there, you got to pay for it.
Nice.
And so he handed me about $30. And I had a very brief flash of, is it right for me to take money from the gamblers? That flash didn't last too long. I thought, I think this is okay. And in fact, I thought our payment on the loan for the parking lot is about $120. This is 1970, whatever it was, four or five, and so the values that would be worth a lot more today. But I thought, well, that's 1/4 of the monthly payment.
Yeah.
Nice. And so I thanked him, and he went back, and I went home, and the next Friday it rained again.
Okay.
Here he comes across the parking lot. He has another contribution for me, again about $30, and I thought, this is great. The Lord works in mysterious ways. The gamblers are helping us pay for the parking lot.
Right.
And the next Friday, it was a blue sky. I found myself looking at the sky, sort of wishing, sort of praying for rain,
Right.
but it didn't rain, and the gamblers didn't make a contribution. And so I have to admit, not proud of this, but as I was walking across the parking lot to go home, I was sort of downcast that no more contributions came from the gamblers. And I really felt that the Lord spoke to me deep in my inner consciousness and said, who are you trusting to pay for the parking lot, me or the gamblers? I said, okay, Lord, I guess I needed that. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
And I'll trust you. And so there was never any more money coming from the gamblers, and it was just those 2 times, and that was it. But it was a lesson that you still have to depend on the Lord.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you talk about whether or not it's right to take money from gamblers. It makes me think of a podcast I heard recently, the comedian and actor Rob Schneider. Some of the things that he's done would not necessarily be things you'd want to promote in Sunday school.
Yeah.
So, but he had a conversion experience, and so he tells a joke of he went to the Catholic priest and he said, I'm kind of got this moral dilemma. I'm a comedian, and people are used to hearing certain things from me, and now I feel like maybe I should be taming down the act a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't be swearing. And I'm going to tell this maybe a little bit wrong, but I'm going to try to tell it so it's close and it's a good story. But the priest said, well, when we have a conversion experience, sometimes we need to make sacrifices. And he said, yeah, and I guess you would expect that your life would change. Well, that's what I'm trying to say, Rob. Things are going to change. Everything's not going to be the same. And he said, well, it's just people are used to that, and I may not have as many people coming to the shows. I may not get as many laughs. I may, well, that's part of the sacrifice. Well, Father, that is probably going to affect how much money I can give to the church. And he says, I forgive you for your swearing.
Yeah, sad but true.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the volunteer fire alarm or whatever you want to call it that you thought was an air raid. What was your scariest experience?
Well, I've had some moments that caused me a little trepidation through the years. Carol and I visited some foreign countries that were considered to be not really safe for Americans, and so I remember one time we had an escort from our host's home to the airport by the chief of police and some of his officers. And so, I thought, well, what could have happened turned out okay.
Yeah.
But I think my scariest experience was when we lived in Evansville, Indiana. I was pastor at a church there. I was out calling, visiting church members and potential attendees on a Thursday night. And for some reason, I came back by the church on my way home.
Okay.
And I went in the side door of the church, and just inside there was a landing where you could either go down to the basement or up to where
Right.
the offices were.
Yeah, I remember that.
My office was right at the top of the stairs. And so I went to my door and noticed it was ajar. And I thought, well, that's strange because we always keep that door locked. And so I opened it and went in, and I thought maybe in closing doors in the church, there's some air pressure. Maybe it hadn't gotten latched and some air pressure had popped it open. So I went inside, and then the door between my office and my secretary's office was open pretty wide. And I thought, well, we always keep those doors closed.
Right.
But then as I hadn't turned the lights on yet because there was a street light that brought a lot of light into the office. And but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness in her office, I saw that a file cabinet drawer was open. And I thought,
Okay.
well, that's strange. What in the world is going on?
Yeah. Mary Lynn was very,
Conscientious?
yeah, she wouldn't leave things just half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then as I looked deeper into her office and my eyes adjusted more, I saw a man standing there in a light tan trench coat. And this is one time this preacher was speechless. I lost my ability to speak.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't. I wanted to speak. I couldn't get anything out. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I'm face to face with a burglar,
Yeah.
and I've interrupted him, which I'm sure he was not happy about. Neither
Right.
was I. We didn't keep a lot of money on hand. We always took the offerings to the bank right after the service. The tellers took care of that, and
Yeah.
the treasurer, but she might have had some petty cash, but he wouldn't have known that. He was looking for whatever he could find, I'm sure. So finally, I found my voice. I reached over and flipped on the light switch, and then I thought, oh, well, that probably wasn't the smartest move. Now, he can see me better than I can see him because I'm in the light and he's still in the dark.
Right.
But then I said, who are you? What do you want? Come over here in the light. So he came over and stood there. I said, who are you? What are you doing here? I mean, I knew what he was doing there. He was a burglar. But,
Yeah.
At the time, you don't know what to say. And so he didn't say a word. But after a moment, he bolted out the door, ran down the steps, and hit the glass doors, which I had locked behind me. I locked myself in with a burglar.
Well, before you knew anything was wrong.
That's true.
But yeah.
But then I heard him turn and go down into the basement. I thought, oh, my lands, what do I do now? So I calmly went down the stairs, unlocked the door, came back up the steps, and called down, I've unlocked the door, you can get out. And so he came back and went out the door, and then I called the police.
Yeah.
And they came, they investigated. I mean, chances of finding anything, I don't remember whether they took fingerprints or not, but, I didn't feel like they took it very seriously because I didn't get hurt, and it didn't look like anything was missing. We did later discover there were a few dollars missing, probably petty cash.
Right.
But, and as far as I know, they never found him. But I asked the police, did I do the right thing? And they said, absolutely you did, because when you have somebody trapped like that and they feel desperate, you don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
We did find a crowbar in Mary Lynn's office.
Okay.
And had he chosen to use that as a weapon,
Right.
I could have been in big trouble.
Wow.
But anyway, that was pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty scary. And like you said, could have ended in a much worse way if he had
Right.
decided to try to fight his way out or
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
So glad that didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of scary experiences, I seem to remember several years back you had a heart attack, and not only that, you were on an airplane when it happened.
I was. We were flying into Columbus, Ohio. For a couple of days, I'd been having some unusual sensations in my shoulder, upper chest, and my arm. And but on this flight into Columbus, I was going for a meeting of district superintendents. There wasn't anything there for my wife to do, but she was with me because she had a couple of cousins in Columbus, and I told her, after my meetings, we'll visit your cousins because you don't get a chance to see them very often. But on the way into Columbus, I began feeling nauseous. I began perspiring and a heaviness in my chest. Well, I knew those were classic signs of a heart attack. So I said, as everybody is off the plane, please get a flight attendant. Tell them I need paramedics. And so that's what happened. When we pulled up to the gate, I happened to look out the window and saw an ambulance parked right there. I don't know if they always have an ambulance at the airport or not. I never asked anybody.
Yeah.
But it was there that time. And so the paramedics were right there within minutes. And they asked me if I thought I could walk off the plane. I could. I got onto a gurney. They took me to the hospital. And I distinctly remember it was Grant Hospital in Columbus, the same hospital where your mother was born.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And on the way, I'm looking out the back window. And the paramedics confirmed, sir, you are having a heart attack. Because they had my blood pressure and they had me wired up to things and all that. And I just remembered thinking, looking out the back window of is this it? Wow. Is this the day, that I end this life? I didn't feel like that really was but you can't help but think that when you're in that situation.
Right.
They got me to the hospital and fortunately they had a brand new heart catheterization lab with the latest equipment. And they rushed me up there and did a heart catheterization, put in a couple of stents. I had an artery that was 100% blocked. But all's well that ends well, thank the Lord.
Yeah.
And those two cousins, one of them took us into her home, and the doctors didn't want me to travel for a while, so we stayed with them for about a week. And then the other cousins came and took us back to the airport when it was time to fly back. We lived in Iowa at that time. So it all turned out well, and they put me on medication that fortunately it seems to work well for me. So I haven't had any more trouble since then with my heart. So I'm grateful.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great result for that. Well, when we started, I mentioned that it's Easter week, 2026. And so I remember when I was growing up, of course, my brother Michael and we would kind of celebrate some of the, I don't know, I guess American traditional Easter things with Easter baskets and some candy and whatnot. But also the biggest thing was Easter morning service. Right. And we always would get dressed up. We kind of got dressed up every week back then, but maybe a little bit more on Easter. And so good memories from all of that. But I just wonder what are some good memories, or what's your favorite thing about Easter?
Well, I do remember in my childhood, same kind of things, Easter baskets, candy. My parents weren't wealthy, but for some way, my mother always saw to it that I had a new outfit for Easter. Okay. And I remember specifically new shoes, and we would go to church, and I do remember those things about it, and that was pleasant. Of course, the best thing about Easter is the fact that we are celebrating the resurrection of Christ.
Yeah.
He died on the cross for our sins. They buried him, and he rose again.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference for everybody that will receive Jesus as their Savior.
Exactly.
Yep. He said that because I live, you shall live also. So consequently, we have promise of eternal life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, growing up, and I think a lot of kids are this way, I thought Christmas was the best holiday or
Sure.
even the most important holiday in the church. I don't know. It's just such a big deal everywhere. But then later, you realize that Easter is really the most important. And you'll remember this more accurately than I will, but wasn't it Paul who said that no one should be pitied more than us if the resurrection isn't true?
Yes, he said, if in this life only we have hope, we are of all men most miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jesus rising from the dead proved that he was and is the one and only Son of the true and living God.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, that's great news and the most important thing to us. And
Absolutely.
so I thank you for joining us. We're also going to have an episode of You with Hillary, and so I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to that as well. But it's been great to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners and viewers for sharing this time with us. We know your time is important, and we appreciate you joining us for this episode of The David and Hillary Show.
See ya.